The wealthy CEO was making his way home from the office when he noticed 3 small girls peacefully sleeping in his lobby, holding a note that would alter the course of his life. Brandon Carter found himself at the office later than ever before. He typically departed before the clock struck midnight, even during the most challenging days. Yet tonight had stretched endlessly, filled with conversations with international investors, pressing emails, and a board meeting that spiraled in circles for hours. His head pounded with intensity. With his tie casually loosened and his jacket draped over one shoulder, he entered the marble-floored lobby of Carter Holdings, the towering glass embodiment of all his hard work. The lights flickered softly, enveloping the space in a hushed stillness. Only the solitary figure of the security guard lingered, offering a nod from the front desk. Brandon acknowledged with a nod, already on his way out when he caught sight of them. 3 young girls, resting peacefully, curled up on the leather couch in the far corner of the lobby. Their small bodies huddled together for warmth, jackets lay over them like cozy blankets. Initially, Brandon believed his vision was deceiving him. Yet, as he approached, an eerie coldness swept over him. The girls were a perfect mirror of each other, with their light blonde curls, soft round cheeks, and button noses. Twins were uncommon. 3 siblings born at the same time, practically unknown. They appeared to be no more than 6 years old. They wore plain clothes, as if they had been on the road for some time. Next to them rested 2 backpacks showing signs of use. A girl held tightly to a wrinkled piece of paper in her small hand. Brandon spoke in a hushed tone as he faced the security guard. For what duration have they been present? The guard appeared uneasy. They arrived at approximately 8 o'clock. They mentioned they were waiting for their father. I had hoped that someone would arrive for them, yet no one ever showed up. Brandon lowered himself gradually, taking care not to alarm them, yet none of them moved. Their expressions were serene, yet their cheeks bore the rosy hue of the chill in the air. He delicately took the paper from the girl's grasp and opened it with care. It was a message. The script was inconsistent, with letters sprawling and unsteady. It appeared as though a young one had painstakingly crafted it. If you're reading this, it signifies that Mom hasn't returned. We visited your workplace. Mia, Liv, and Amber are our names. Mom mentioned that if anything were to occur, we should seek you out, since you are our father. Brandon found himself utterly immobilized. The name Mom reverberated in his mind, along with another, Hannah. It had been more than 6 years since he last heard from her. Their time together was fleeting yet etched in memory, a summer tempest that vanished all too quickly. They had never formally ended their relationship. She had simply vanished. Silence on the line. No explanations needed. After a lengthy search, he ultimately persuaded himself that she had moved on. Perhaps he did as well. Yet now, as he gazed at the trio of slumbering children, indistinguishable, flawless, and oddly reminiscent, he sensed the earth tremble beneath him. These were no ordinary children. They bore his resemblance. Not at all. Not in a subtle manner. The contours of their visages, the twist of their locks, even their mouths. He saw his own expression reflected back, softened into something delicate and pure. In that moment, he was struck by the sensation of peering into a bygone era, witnessing a life that had unfolded in his absence, unbeknownst to him. He leaned back gradually, the note clutched tightly in his hand, his heart racing. Certainty had finally settled in. Certainly not with a message of that nature. Not with expressions like those. In the time that had passed since her departure, Hannah had welcomed triplets into the world. His trio of little ones. And she had vanished. He gazed at them once more, truly observing how they clustered together, how they had etched his workplace into their memories, how they had lingered all evening, hoping he would step through those doors. A surge of emotion enveloped him. Remorse, stunned, affection, a fear so piercing it took away his breath. There was no one left for them, and regardless of his preparedness, they had made their approach to him. Brandon Carter, a mastermind behind billion-dollar empires, a leader of thousands, and a meticulous planner of every moment, found himself utterly unready for the unexpected turn that awaited him. Yet he was certain of one thing. He was not turning his back. Brandon personally escorted each girl out of the building, one at a time. He carefully lifted each of them from the couch, cradling their tiny bodies as if they were delicate porcelain, while they remained peacefully asleep. The security guard stood frozen, eyes wide, too shocked to utter a single word. Brandon found himself devoid of answers, yet his instincts were loud and clear, insisting that these girls should not be left alone in a lobby. Whatever chaos had unfolded, it was his responsibility to resolve it. He chose not to bring them to his penthouse. The atmosphere, sleek and still, adorned with glass and an air of chill, seemed off. Instead, he made his way to the house he hadn't visited in years, the one from his childhood, nestled on a serene street beyond the city's hustle. The house had remained vacant since his mother's departure, yet it still exuded a sense of warmth, with its vintage furniture, worn rugs, and walls that echoed with memories of laughter. It was the nearest semblance of solace he could provide them in such a brief span of time. He placed them gently in the guest room, side by side on the worn double bed, tucking soft blankets around their tiny forms. They remained still, instinctively drawing nearer to each other as if it were second nature. He lingered in the doorway, gazing at them intently, the note still clutched in his hand. "Since you are our father." The echoes of those words lingered in his mind since the moment he encountered them. Brandon hardly found any rest. He lounged on the couch in the living room, gazing at the ceiling, attempting to remember every nuance of his moments with Hannah. Their bond ignited unexpectedly, two souls colliding in a moment that felt utterly misplaced. She was exceptional, fervent, and elusive. He had yearned for something deeper, yet she disappeared before he could voice his desires. At that moment, he pondered whether fear had gripped her, or unwell, or perhaps a combination of the two. By morning, he prepared coffee with a machine so ancient he questioned whether it still functioned. The aroma wafted through the air, coinciding with the soft patter of tiny footsteps reverberating down the corridor. Mia, one of the girls he believed, glanced around the corner. She donned an oversized hoodie that cascaded beyond her hands, gently brushing against her eyes, as if she had just emerged from a dreamlike slumber. Brandon lowered himself to one knee. "Greetings," he murmured gently. She gazed at him, uncertain yet unafraid. "Are you Brandon?" she inquired. He gave a slight nod. "Then you're our dad," she remarked, as though it were the most ordinary thing imaginable. Behind her, the other two emerged. Liv, a touch more reserved, with serious eyes, and Amber, who swiftly made her way to the couch, climbing up as if she had always belonged there. All of them shared the same gaze. Those eyes of his. The realization hit him once more with force. He struggled to articulate his thoughts. "Are you aware of what transpired with your mother?" Mia acknowledged with a grave nod. "She fell gravely ill. She mentioned that it was here to stay. We spent a considerable amount of time with her. One evening, she shared with us that if she didn't awaken, we should seek you out. Liv mentioned. She directed us precisely where to head. It was inscribed on a card. The structure you inhabit." Brandon experienced a sensation as if the very breath had been knocked out of him. "The address is etched in your memory. Every night before bed we had to repeat it," Mia said, sitting cross-legged on the floor. "She mentioned that you are a decent person, simply occupied." That single term, busy, pierced more profoundly than any allegation ever might. He refrained from questioning why Hannah had not contacted him. He refrained from questioning why she had kept the pregnancy a secret from him. The significance of those questions had faded away. What was significant was that three girls had traversed the city streets, entered an unfamiliar corporate tower, and spent the entire night in anticipation of being acknowledged. Indeed, he prepared pancakes for them, though they were far from perfect, slightly charred around the edges, but they chose to remain silent about it. They gathered around the weathered wooden table, their legs swinging playfully as they laughed at the generous amount of syrup Brandon had poured onto his plate. Following breakfast, they navigated the house as if it were an exhilarating adventure park. They explored every drawer, glanced behind every door. Their curiosity was untainted by fear, driven instead by a steadfast resilience and an insatiable desire for a sense of belonging. As the day drew to a close, the house seemed to pulse with vitality once more. The aroma was reminiscent of maple syrup mingling with shampoo. The rhythmic sound of footsteps resonated from above, intertwined with melodic singing and the soft flutter of pages turning in a bedtime storybook. Brandon perched on the edge of the couch that night, the note resting beside him, a cup of untouched tea cradled in his hand. He lacked a strategy. He was completely in the dark about what would unfold next. For the first time in his life, uncertainty felt like a new beginning rather than a setback. Felt like a new chapter unfolding. He gazed down the hallway at the room where the girls lay sleeping, 3 identical forms nestled beneath a single large blanket, and murmured softly to himself, "You found me." This time he was firmly rooted in place. Brandon dedicated the following morning to making phone calls he never thought he would find himself making. His typical day would commence with a precise, orchestrated cadence, filled with meetings, updates, figures, and negotiations. Yet this time, rather than occupying his corner office, he found himself at the kitchen table in a worn hoodie, delving into research on family lawyers and child custody experts. Meanwhile, one of the girls, Liv, was in the living room, braiding her sister's hair and inquiring about having peanut butter for lunch. He convinced himself he was a person capable of facing any challenge. He had orchestrated billion-dollar agreements, maneuvered through international turmoil, and dismissed whole teams with an unwavering demeanor. Yet, nothing could have equipped him for the sudden reality of becoming a father of 3 in an instant. He experienced a disconnection from himself, a blend of fear and an unexpected sense of grounding. Each time he gazed at them, Mia's inquisitive glance, Liv's subtle focus, Amber's joyful laughter, reflected his own visage through 3 small prisms. It was an issue he couldn't overlook or simply turn his back on. The connection was silent, yet unmistakable. The attorney he engaged went by the name Marion Lewis. Her voice was steady and composed, showing no signs of surprise as Brandon recounted everything: the note, the couch in the lobby, and his unawareness of Hannah's children. Marion absorbed everything without passing any judgment. She detailed the legal process meticulously, breaking it down into clear, manageable steps. In the absence of a will from Hannah and with no living relatives coming forward at this time, Brandon could seek emergency guardianship and subsequently aim for full custody once paternity is established. Yet that term, paternity, hung in the atmosphere like a pointed finger. He was certain without the need for a test. Nevertheless, the law demanded evidence, so he consented. 2 days later, he took the girls to the clinic. They hardly inquired at all. Amber was curious about whether it would cause her pain. Mia grasped her hand tightly. Liv remained silent, yet she positioned herself nearest to him in the waiting room, her shoulder gently touching his. Upon returning home, Brandon endeavored to establish a routine. They began with the basics, having breakfast at a consistent hour, strolls around the neighborhood following dinner. He registered them at a local school on a provisional basis, had a conversation with the principal, and shared just enough details without disclosing too much. He purchased new clothes that suited them perfectly and allowed them to choose their favorite cereals and toothbrushes. Certain nights proved to be more challenging. Liv experienced haunting dreams that she kept to herself. Mia inquired whether he had ever experienced fatherhood. Amber felt a wave of emotion wash over her as she stumbled upon a photo of Hannah nestled among the items in one of the boxes they had brought. Brandon always acknowledged that he didn't possess all the answers. Instead, he remained with them, embraced them, shared tales, and reassured them repeatedly that he would not leave. One evening, after the girls had settled in for the night, Marion reached out with the results. The examination validated his prior understanding. He was their biological progenitor. The documentation would soon start to transition, and the judicial system would advance with the custody proceedings. Yet, it lacked the essence of triumph. It felt as if the weight of the world was pressing down. He lingered on the front porch that night, the cool air gently caressing his face. The dwelling behind him was alive with the gentle sighs of plush creatures, accompanied by the sporadic groan of the floorboards beneath. The tranquility had vanished. It was a dwelling, chaotic and vibrant. He gazed at the stars, his mind drifting to thoughts of Hannah. He pondered the strength it took for her to handle everything, nurturing 3 children, guiding them, and equipping them for a future without her presence. She had shown a courage he had never fully understood. He murmured her name into the shadows, not anticipating a reply. Yet within, in the areas he once populated with clamor and figures, a change had occurred. He was uncertain about the kind of father he might become. He was determined to make an attempt. Each and every day. For the first time in years, the act of trying seemed sufficient. Brandon was starting to realize that being a dad wasn't about making big, flashy moves. It was about showing up, time after time, even in moments of uncertainty. The dwelling that previously existed in quietude now resonated with vitality. The girls infused vibrancy into every nook and cranny. They bickered about who would claim the final blueberry muffin, left a trail of muddy footprints in the hallway, and were adamant about incorporating glitter into everything, even their homework. Each day presented a fresh obstacle. Mia's insatiable curiosity about the world, Liv's gentle sensitivity that resonates deeply, and Amber's untamed energy that can transform tranquility into turmoil in mere moments. Brandon was drained in ways he had never known, yet he also felt more vibrant than he had in years. He began the morning routine of school drop-offs, strolling alongside them as their tiny hands clutched his fingers. Educators cast him inquisitive, courteous glances. Other parents, who had seen him on television or in business magazines, frequently cast curious glances or murmured among themselves. He chose to overlook it. He no longer felt a connection to those circles he had once been part of, and it didn't matter to him. Within the confines of his home, he tackled math problems that perplexed him, prepared meals that were sometimes passable, and memorized the lyrics to tunes he never imagined would echo beyond a toy advertisement. On a Thursday afternoon, he found himself running late to pick them up. A meeting with his attorney had dragged on, and the traffic was a complete mess. Upon his arrival, he discovered the girls perched on the school steps, backpacks resting in their laps. Mia's brow furrowed with concern. Liv remained quiet, and Amber's expression twisted in exasperation. Silence enveloped them as they settled into the car. The quiet stung deeper than any accusation ever could. Upon returning home, Brandon knelt beside them in the kitchen. "Text, I made a mistake," he admitted candidly. "I ought to have arrived punctually. That will not occur again." He lingered in anticipation. At last, Liv turned her gaze toward him. "You were the sole absence in the gathering." "I understand," he responded softly. "I apologize." Amber muttered. Her mother was perpetually tardy as well. Something within that shattered him. What they experienced wasn't anger. It was fear. Worry of fading into obscurity, of taking a back seat once more. That night, he vowed to keep his word. It's not merely about improvement. It's about demonstrating that even adults stumble, and that the act of returning after a misstep holds equal significance to never faltering in the first place. As the weeks went by, the flow between them became increasingly effortless. Brandon started to notice their nuanced cues. When Liv required silence, when Mia sought room to express herself, and when Amber needed to unleash her energy until she was laughing uncontrollably. They began to welcome him into their traditions. Saturday morning dance-offs in the living room, Sunday night storytelling beneath a cozy blanket fort. One evening, as they brushed their teeth, Amber glanced at him in the mirror and inquired, "Are you going to stay forever?" He locked eyes with her and gave a subtle nod. "I'm here to stay." Later that week, a package showed up at the house. There is no return address provided. Inside lay a modest box adorned with Hannah's delicate handwriting on a note, whispering of a moment yet to come. Brandon approached it with caution, opening it slowly, his heart racing with uncertainty about what awaited him within. Within the confines lay vintage photographs, ultrasound snapshots, a tiny plush elephant, and a flash drive. He connected it and discovered a video. Hannah's face lit up the screen, her smile shining even through her weary eyes. She appeared more aged than he recalled, weary yet undeniably beautiful, still unmistakably herself. Her voice was gentle. If you find yourself observing this, it signifies that I was unable to succeed. And it signifies that they have discovered you. Brandon. I felt compelled to ensure they had the information they needed before parting ways. I never intended for you to discover it this way. Yet, I require your trust. I have always yearned to share this with you. I simply lacked the knowledge on how to proceed. Fear enveloped me. You had a lot on your plate. I wasn't certain this would be of interest to you. Her voice trembled, yet she pressed on. They embody all that is wonderful in this world. Kindly show them your affection, not out of obligation but because you recognize their true essence. You were the sole individual to whom I ever entrusted my heart, and I sincerely hope that, in some way, you'll place your trust in them as well. As the video concluded, Brandon remained still, enveloped in silence, while the distant sound of the girls' laughter drifted in from the next room. He held back tears, not due to a lack of pain, but because a quiet strength within him was beginning to mend. That night, he gently placed the elephant in Amber's bed. He carefully framed the ultrasound and displayed it proudly in the hallway. Uncertain of what the next day held, he was resolute in his commitment to embrace every moment that came his way. He had ceased to merely exist in this world. He was integrating into it. Step by step, day by day, he was crafting a family, not out of obligation, but from a deep desire that filled his heart. The 5th week ushered in a subtle change in the girls' perceptions of Brandon. It lacked any theatrical flair. There were no sweeping declarations or intense displays of feeling. It was in the subtle details, the effortless manner in which they reached for his hand, the anticipation with which they saved their best school stories for his return, the radiant expressions that blossomed on their faces as he entered the room. It existed in the unspoken trust that lingered between us. The residence had transformed as well. It had transformed into a realm he truly belonged to, a place where he could unravel the complexities of his thoughts. The scene was chaotic, alive with noise. The carpet bore the remnants of glitter, a mountain of mismatched socks that stubbornly persisted, and artwork plastered across every inch of wall space. Most of the pieces depicted the 4 of them. Brandon, ever dapper in his tie, the girls clad in matching dresses, and a son whose smiley face radiated joy above them all. One evening, Mia misplaced her beloved stuffed bunny, and her tears flowed freely, leaving Brandon puzzled at first. It transcended mere playthings. It was a profound weariness, a deep sorrow, a swirling uncertainty, perhaps even a dread that something else might vanish next. He chose not to address it. He settled beside her on the floor, gently sifting through toy bins and peering beneath couches until they discovered the bunny snugly lodged behind a bookshelf. She failed to express her gratitude. She embraced it closely and drifted off to sleep, nestled beside him on the rug. That moment transformed him. There existed neither reward nor performance, only the essence of being. It was the first moment he truly grasped the essence of nurturing from a place of feeling rather than mere practicality. Liv, ever the most reserved of the trio, had begun to inquire more frequently. At times, she would settle at the table with her drawing pad and unexpectedly pose questions such as, "What was my mom's laughter like? Did you know she enjoyed having cereal at night?" Brandon was never one to possess all the answers. He responded with what he knew, and when uncertainty arose, he turned to Lauren, Hannah's oldest friend, who had started coming around more frequently to help clarify the gaps. Liv rarely replied immediately. However, hours later, she would occasionally leave a fresh drawing on his nightstand or gently intertwine her fingers with his as they navigated the street. That was her method of indicating she was paying attention. Amber, the untamed spirit, had transformed the living room into her personal stage for expression. She transformed furniture into whimsical props, cranked up the music, and concocted dances that defied logic yet brought joy to her sisters. One evening, following a dinner that had spiraled into delightful chaos with spaghetti adorning the ceiling, she climbed onto the coffee table and proclaimed, "You're officially our dad now." The ballots have been cast. Then she remarked, "But you still can't cook." Brandon erupted into laughter, a sound he hadn't experienced in months. Not due to its humor, although it certainly had that quality, but because, for the first time, it resonated with authenticity. The walls were more than mere paint. The space was not merely occupied. He was meant to be here. He was desired in this place. As the week progressed, the last of the paperwork arrived. Full custody has been awarded. The court meticulously examined all aspects, including his paternity, the girl's circumstances, and the footage provided by Hannah. Brandon had anticipated a sense of relief, yet what enveloped him was a weightier sensation. Not bad, simply vast. It felt as though a life had been bestowed upon him, one he never sought, yet now he found it impossible to envision existence without it. With quiet resolve, he signed the documents, then carefully placed the final copy into the drawer next to his bed. It was confirmed. However, the girls had made their decision well in advance of any judge. That evening, he attempted to prepare dinner, but it didn't go well, and once more, the garlic bread ended up charred. The girls playfully ribbed him throughout, yet no one voiced any discontent. Later, they nestled on the couch, wrapped in blankets with popcorn in hand, immersed in an animated film that none of them completed, as Amber dozed off midway and Liv succumbed to sleep just 5 minutes after. Mia fought to keep her eyes open, yet she found herself leaning against his side, surrendering to sleep mid-sentence. Brandon lingered in that embrace for what felt like an eternity, his arms wrapped around them, while the soft murmur of the television played in the background. He was not preoccupied with his job. He remained oblivious to the empire he had distanced himself from. He pondered over Hannah, reflecting on the depth of her trust in him, a trust she never voiced. He longed to express that he hadn't turned his back this time, that he remained, that he would continue to remain. And in that journey, he was discovering how to become the man she always envisioned him to be. On a Tuesday morning, the tranquility they had carefully constructed started to come apart, not through conflict or outbursts, but with the arrival of a letter. It sat there in the mailbox, substantial and bearing an air of authority, devoid of any return address. Brandon opened it in the kitchen while the girls were still brushing their teeth, anticipating school forms or legal documents. Instead, he read the words with deliberate slowness, as if they were inscribed in an unfamiliar tongue. A legal notice had been issued, indicating a man's intention to seek custody, asserting that he was Hannah's brother, Jason Walters, a name that was entirely unfamiliar to Brandon. A man, freshly released from prison, sought the court's approval for guardianship, emphasizing his family connections and worries about the children's surroundings. He desired the girls. Each one of them. Brandon remained motionless, clutching the paper tightly as his knuckles paled to a stark white. Silence enveloped the kitchen, an unexpected stillness settling in. He was uncertain which thought filled him with greater dread, the mere existence of this man, or the fact that he had chosen this moment to reveal himself. As the girls entered, their lively debate over the funniest cartoon character filled the room, and he couldn't help but smile as he discreetly tucked the letter beneath a stack of newspapers. He aimed to avoid frightening them. Not at this moment. He reached out to Marianne without delay. Her voice remained steady, yet he could sense the underlying tension in her words. It presented a legal challenge. Jason was family, and although his past offenses would be considered, courts typically prioritized biological connections when evaluating guardianship matters. Marianne cautioned that the media could seize upon the narrative. Brandon's history, his affluence, and the mere reality that he had only recently entered the girls' lives would all be weaponized against him. Public sentiment has not consistently adhered to reason. The narrative unfolded effortlessly, featuring a billionaire businessman with a tumultuous history of privilege who unexpectedly finds himself raising 3 unknown daughters, while the true family struggles to be heard. Brandon perched on the edge of his bed that night, gazing at the ceiling, contemplating how everything had shifted so rapidly. The home, previously brimming with warmth and laughter, now seemed delicate once more, as if the happiness they had created could be snatched away by a mere signature in a courtroom. He refused to allow that to occur. He simply wouldn't. The girls felt the unease in the air, despite his silence on the matter. Liv inquired whether anything was amiss. Mia embraced him more tightly than she typically did. Amber nestled against him at night, as though sensing the possibility of his vanishing. That devastated him more than any legal threat ever could. They were beginning to embrace the notion of safety. He couldn't allow that conviction to crumble. Marianne submitted a countermotion. She constructed a compelling argument, drawing on every available piece of evidence. His established custody, the school reports, therapist evaluations, and even Hannah's video. Their records detailed the remarkable stability the girls had achieved, the extent of Brandon's involvement in their everyday routines, and the absence of any communication from Jason until this point. She cautioned him that the case could potentially proceed to court. Jason's attorneys were relentless, skillfully manipulating the media narrative to portray Brandon as a man feigning domesticity with children he hardly knew, attempting to mend a tarnished public persona through the facade of fatherhood. That evening, Brandon engaged in an activity he hadn't partaken in for quite some time. He wept, not out of concern for his own safety, but because he felt helpless in shielding the girls from the harsh realities that lay beyond their threshold. He had constructed empires, subdued rivals, and navigated turmoil with unwavering accuracy. Yet nothing could have equipped him for the profound vulnerability of being unable to protect his child from forces beyond his grasp. The court hearing was finally set to take place. Brandon conveyed the truth to the girls with utmost caution and sensitivity. He elaborated that an individual had stepped up, a figure from their mother's history, who felt he ought to be the one responsible for their care. Amber's eyes grew large with surprise. Mia appeared perplexed. Liv froze for a moment, then posed a solitary question. Do we have the option to choose? Brandon swallowed hard, a lump forming in his throat as he nodded in agreement. You have the opportunity to express the truth. That's all I request. On the day of the hearing, an unusual chill permeated the courtroom, making it feel colder than expected. Jason occupied the opposite seat, his clean-shaven face framed by a borrowed suit, accompanied by a lawyer whose words dripped with feigned empathy. He asserted that Brandon was unfit to care for the girls, alleging that he had exploited the system through wealth and influence, and contended that Hannah would have preferred her children to be raised by family. Brandon offered only a few words in reply. He felt no need to justify himself verbally. He allowed the evidence to convey its message, and, crucially, he gave the girls a voice. One by one, they met with a child advocate, responding to straightforward questions about their lives, daily routines, and feelings at home. Liv mentioned that he doesn't attempt to take the place of mom. He simply makes an effort to be present. Mia recounted the time he burned pancakes, and we spent the entire morning in laughter. Amber mentioned that he lifts me up when I drift off in the car. Without fail. The judge's ruling in Brandon's favor came without any grand speeches or theatrical moments. Silence enveloped the surroundings. Serene. Conclusive. The request submitted by Jason was turned down. Brandon's guardianship has been confirmed once again. The girls were secure. Later, just outside the courthouse, Mia inquired if they could grab some ice cream. Amber leaped at the suggestion, while Liv simply nodded, a sense of quiet relief washing over her. Brandon nodded in agreement, despite the tremors still coursing through his hands. As he sat at the table, 3 bowls of ice cream melting rapidly before him, he observed the girls laughing and playfully arguing over toppings, and a profound realization dawned on him. This went beyond mere safety for them. It was about preserving their integrity. In this journey, he uncovered fragments of his identity that had long been absent. In the weeks that followed the court's decision, everything around Brandon began to slow down, not in a way that felt stagnant, but rather like the gentle descent one experiences when stepping off the edge of a cliff and landing softly. For the first time since the girls arrived, he sensed a slight lifting of the heavy burden of constant worry from his shoulders. He wasn't oblivious. He understood that life would continue to present its challenges. Yet the fear of losing them had vanished, and that transformed everything. His steps were now resolute, and he felt a newfound certainty as he tucked them in at night. They belonged to him, and even more significantly, he belonged to them. The girls slipped back into their routine with ease, as though they had been waiting in suspense and could now finally let out a sigh of relief. Brandon observed that Amber's laughter had grown more vibrant, her high-pitched giggle resonating throughout the house with unbridled joy. Liv, once diligent about ensuring his presence, now found solace in her reading nook for hours, fully immersed in the world of fantasy. Mia began crafting tales, brief and wild escapades that consistently showcased a courageous father equipped with a map and a flashlight, guiding his daughters through magical woods or forgotten cities. Brandon stored each one in a box beside his desk, revisiting them in the stillness of the night when the house was serene. Their dwelling transformed into a true sanctuary. Brandon transformed the girls' bedroom, allowing them to choose the paint colors and wall stickers. The outcome was a dazzling display of stars, rainbows, and unicorns that defied any sense of design, yet filled every visitor with delight. He arranged a bookshelf adorned with Hannah's cherished novels and filled it with the beloved picture books of the girls. He fixed the squeaky front steps and planted flowers with them in the backyard, despite the fact that none of them truly had any gardening experience. It was of no consequence. Their shared experiences wove them closer together as a family. Brandon started to step back into the world, but this time he was in control of the narrative. He convened with the board of Carter Holdings and officially turned down any proposal for a return. The enterprise he had created no longer mirrored his true self. Instead, he channeled his energy into a fresh endeavor, a foundation named after Hannah, committed to aiding single parents and assisting children in transition. For him, it transcended mere charity. It was intimate. He understood the weight of feeling overwhelmed, unprepared, and scared, yet still choosing to step forward. He aimed to craft something that could reveal itself to others as he had come to understand. The launch of the foundation was understated. Without media coverage or extravagant events, he extended an invitation to a handful of close friends and colleagues, yet the majority of the room was occupied by parents, counselors, and volunteers. In his speech, Brandon chose not to address themes of success, finance, or legacy. He spoke of a note resting in a young girl's palm, reflecting on the significance of being selected, not for wealth, not for appearance, but because someone had faith in your capacity to love, even in challenging times. That evening, in the comfort of his home, he found himself seated on the living room floor as the girls joyfully stacked stuffed animals upon his lap. They were getting ready for the great teddy bear sleepover, a delightful tradition that unfolded in a whirlwind of excitement every Friday night. The atmosphere was inviting, with a gentle warmth in the air, soft lighting casting a cozy glow, and the rich aroma of buttered popcorn lingering in the surroundings. Mia nestled against him. Liv reclined on a beanbag chair, softly humming a tune. Amber perched on the couch, delivering a theatrical address to her plush audience about courage and the importance of bedtime. Brandon observed them all, experiencing a tranquility that eluded description, a sensation more profound than pride and more lasting than joy. Later, as the girls drifted into slumber, he lingered at their bedroom doorway, arms folded across his chest, absorbing the scene before him. He no longer felt like someone caught off guard by the responsibilities of raising a child. He sensed that he was not closing the gap on a life that had surged forward without him. He felt anchored. Here it is. Conscious of his missteps, he arrived late and stumbled through, yet he recognized that he had persevered. The act of remaining present, returning time and time again, gradually changed everything. The dwelling, the young women, himself. He frequently found his thoughts drifting to Hannah. At times, he envisioned her seated opposite him on the porch, gazing at the sunset, silently nodding in approval. At other moments, he caught the sound of her laughter in Amber's voice or glimpsed her bravery reflected in Liv's unwavering gaze. There were times when her absence hit him with such intensity, it felt like a breath was taken from him. Yet more often he found himself filled with gratitude for the moments they shared and for the essence of her that continued to thrive in their daughters. Brandon Carter had crafted numerous creations throughout his life. Organizations, standing, prosperity. Yet, Nothing he had ever crafted could rival what he was constructing now. A sanctuary woven from memories, trust, and a gentle, enduring love. In that home, he discovered a life that transcended monetary value, measured instead by bedtime tales, forgotten shoes scattered in the hallway, and the reassuring knowledge that he was no longer fleeing from something, but rather moving toward it. Spring made its entrance subtly, with gentle rain pattering on the windows and delicate green shoots emerging from the earth in the backyard, where the girls had assisted Brandon in planting. The atmosphere seemed to lift, as if the whole dwelling had at last released a long-held breath. Nearly a year had passed since that fateful night when he discovered them resting in the lobby. Yet the memory lingered in his mind with such clarity that it felt as if it had occurred just yesterday. He still envisioned their tiny forms huddled together, the wrinkled note clutched in Mia's hand, and the deep pang in his heart when he understood they had sought him out, not as part of a scheme but as a final plea. And now, almost imperceptibly, that frantic start had transformed into a vibrant, living existence. The residence had transformed alongside the season. It radiated with a warmth that transcended sunlight, infused instead by the vibrant sketches adorning the fridge, the lively dance beats echoing through the afternoons, the inviting aroma of cinnamon waffles wafting in on weekends, and the joyful sound of little feet racing down the hallway each morning. The girls had evolved in ways he hadn't anticipated. Mia had embraced the art of storytelling, and she now shared her tales aloud before bedtime, frequently featuring herself and her sisters as regal queens, daring pirates, or adventurous astronauts. Liv had mastered the art of cooking eggs to her precise liking and made it a point to prepare breakfast every Sunday. Amber had lost her first tooth and adamantly insisted that Brandon not dispose of it, preserving it in a sparkling box she had labeled, "My Strength." Brandon had also evolved, yet it remained an unspoken topic. He had mastered the art of braiding hair without the aid of online tutorials, learned to soothe scraped knees with gentle words rather than frantic reactions, and discovered the importance of a sincere apology when his temper flared. He discovered that raising children wasn't merely about having all the answers. It was about the depth of love that compelled one to persist, even in moments of exhaustion and fear. The girls' school was hosting its yearly spring concert, and this time all three of them were set to perform. It marked their inaugural moment on stage together. Mia was set to recite a poem, Liv was part of the choir, and Amber, of course, had eagerly signed up to dance. Brandon arrived early and took his place in the front row, a bouquet of flowers resting on the seat next to him, his heart racing with anticipation. As the lights faded, he surveyed the room, parents engaged in conversation, teachers moving about, a line of students murmuring and shifting in their costumes. In that moment, it became clearer than ever how profoundly his life had changed. Neither diminished nor insignificant, simply wholly authentic. As the girls graced the stage, Brandon found himself struggling for breath. They stood beneath the bright lights, their petite forms unwavering and courageous, and he sensed that time had momentarily paused. Mia's voice trembled slightly as she recited her poem, yet upon meeting his gaze in the audience, she regained her composure. Liv sang with clarity, her voice harmonizing beautifully with the others, yet her gaze remained fixed on him, unwavering. Amber, clad in a whimsical outfit adorned with shimmering shoes, twirled joyfully, her arms outstretched as if she were soaring through the air. He applauded with such fervor when it concluded that onlookers glanced his way, yet he remained unfazed. His applause went beyond mere appreciation for their performance. He applauded for all they had endured side by side. Following the concert, they rushed to him, their faces radiant and filled with joy. He knelt and embraced them, the flowers crushed in their midst. "You were incredible," he remarked. "Each and every one of you." Amber promptly inquired whether they could indulge in some ice cream. Liv rolled her eyes, a playful smile tugging at her lips. Mia inquired whether he had captured her poem in a recording. He possessed. Later that night, as the sugar high dissipated and slumber enveloped them all, Brandon found himself standing solitary in the hallway. The house fell into silence once more, yet it was a different kind of stillness than before. The stillness enveloped the space, rich with meaning rather than emptiness. He entered the girls' room and paused for a moment, simply observing. They lay scattered in various positions, one embracing a pillow, another ensnared in a blanket, while the third clutched a flashlight she had neglected to switch off. He retreated into the hallway, his gaze landing on the photo they had framed together, a cherished memory from one of their earliest family moments. In that moment, all four of them were caught in laughter, vibrant and spontaneous, beautifully unrefined. Beside it lay a petite shadow box. Within lay the note Mia had held that evening in the lobby. He had kept it with great care, not as a token of what was gone, but as a symbol of what had been discovered. Brandon was content to let his creation exist in the shadows, away from the prying eyes of the world. Silence reigned, devoid of any media buzz or sensational headlines. A man who had once existed in quietude now found himself in a dwelling brimming with illumination. He discovered meaning not through dominance, but through connection. Not in control, but in acceptance. Not in responses, but in the commitment to remain, to evolve, and to love with all his being. In that instant, he grasped the truth. Often, the most remarkable creation is the life you never envisioned for yourself. The conclusion of this narrative resonates with warmth, and it feels profoundly deserved. The strength lies in the fact that Brandon doesn't receive a flawless, theatrical conclusion. Instead, he undergoes a much deeper, genuine evolution. He fails to rescue the girls. They rescue one another. In the face of every challenge, every error, and every instance of uncertainty, he opts to remain, to grow, and to care, not out of convenience or obligation, but because it is the moral choice. The concluding chapter resonates deeply, illustrating that true healing unfolds not through dramatic acts, but within the simplicity of everyday experiences. School concerts, bedtime rituals, and serene strolls through the home under the night sky. Brandon discovers delight amidst the turmoil, meaning in the little moments, and resilience in embracing his vulnerabilities. By the time we arrive at the conclusion, he no longer holds the title of CEO. He is a dad, a guardian, a man who comes to realize that the life he never envisioned has become the very existence he was destined to embrace. In my opinion, that represents the most profound form of redemption.